Hey guys, Brewski here. So I know I said the next video was going to be something like army selection, but I really didn't have all that ready, and I felt like getting something on here, getting going, showing a little tip, trick, painting, something I actually do with this stuff. So let's just call this a down and dirty way to do magic swords or power swords, whatever it is. A lot of days, the normal thing to do seems to be more like this here, where you see the blade is kind of dark, light, and it takes a lot of blending and a lot of time. And don't get me wrong, that looks amazing. But one of my things about painting is I like it much simpler. I like it to be able to get on the board a little bit faster, and I'm not so crazy about detail. So way back in the day, probably in the late 90s, I saw in a White Dwarf a really simple way to do power weapons, magic weapons, and this is what I'm going to be showing you guys today. So I took these two axes. These are from Eldar Wraithguard, and I just prepped these up. I painted these black and then gave them a coat with metal. This one is the Tarnished Steel by Reaper Miniatures that you see right there. Sorry about the focus. This thing is just not quite doing what I need here. That'll be a little better. And this one, I just tried this out. This is the blackened steel that you see right behind here. And this is, it's just a shade, you can't quite tell because of the shine here, but it's a shade above black. So it's not a very bright metal. And usually with this trick, you're gonna want bright metal. So I'm going to do one, I'm going to do this one to be what I'm really aiming for, and the other one's going to be another way to do it, but not as ideal, not as good. So you get your metal coat down, and what you want to do is go a shade up, and you want to highlight. So this one was the Tarnished Steel here. So we're actually going to go, and this is going to get really bright, we're going to go right for the Polished Silver. And all we're going to do is catch the raised edges on the blade. And you want to be somewhat neat about this. What you don't want to do is get some sort of a dry brushing effect all over. You're just being really neat and going for the edge of the blade. So usually what I'll do, okay, is I'm not going to paint straight on. I'm going to use the edge of my brush and almost go sideways. I'm going to start at this top edge right here. And I'm just going to go like this and drag it across. Now this normally is what you would call an edge highlight, because we're literally highlighting the edge. Okay? And do the same thing all across the edge of the blade on the outside. In this case, you know, this axe head is really detailed. It's got a lot of aesthetic to it. It's not just a crude instrument of war. This is from the Eldar Wraith Blades kit. I just happen to use the swords because I like swords. And rules-wise, I like them better than this thing. I'm not going to do anything with this little engraved detail right here. I'm just going to keep this pretty simple. Another thing you can do, you can notice there's the edge of the blade, and then there's a ridge right in the middle. If you're really careful, okay, you can go and paint that ridge a bit. I'm not catching this perfectly, which is totally fine. But you can see it's got a ridge, and you can even thicken that up or thin it down, whatever you want to do. Like I said, I'm not going for perfect at all. That's just not my style. Some people do, and I'm not, you know, I'm not against that at all. My emphasis is using the time I have and getting stuff on the table. So I just want the edges to really stand out here, because what we're going to do next is going to take those, and it's not going to be as pronounced with the next move. Okay, so I'm going to let that sit for a minute, and I'm going to do the next one. And again, this works better when you have bright metal. You can do this on dark metal, but as you'll see, it doesn't come out as good. Okay, so this dark one, we did the blackened steel, so I'm going to go up to tarnished steel as the highlight color. And that's going to be on this plain axe right there. If I'm being honest, guys, I actually haven't painted in a little bit, so excuse me if I'm rusty. So you can already see what I mean. It's kind of, it's too dark to necessarily show up as well. But, you know, especially if you're new and you haven't done this before, just take it as a little bit of cautionary advice. So if you want to try this, you'll already know you need some brighter metals. All right. I'm not even going to bother with that ridge, because that's, like I said, it's not super going to show up, because what we're going to do next is going to hide some of that detail. But you kind of do get kind of a second chance just based on how we're going to do this. Okay, so instead of doing some kind of lightning effect or something else, all we're going to do is we're going to use some shades or washes, whatever you call these. These are basically like ink. They are not paint. They are not thick. These are the Citadel brand ones. And I think most people tend to go blue. I don't know why that's the thing. Especially in Warhammer 40k, they tend to go with the blue metal effect. That's totally fine. I like green. I hardly ever do red, so we're going to do red. This is not, it's not going to come out like a blood effect, by the way. So if you're thinking that's what you want to do, this is not going to, it's not going to do that kind of a look. Just being brutally honest. Okay, so we're going to get out a little bit bigger brush, just because I don't want to spend all day showing you guys my brush. And no, I didn't put any sticky tack on the bottom of this, so if this thing tips over, that's going to be A, hilarious, B, I guess I'll be a real gamer. Spilling my wash. Get a good bit on the brush. Okay, and we're just going to go all over the blade, like that. Actually, I'm going to get a bit more here. I'm not watering this down either. I'm just going right on the brush, and go all over the blade. Get it everywhere in the cracks. You want this to be prominent. You want this to be thick. Now you can see here what this is doing is it's bringing out the detail that we highlighted onto the edge. And if you're really, really clever, you kind of want to move it so maybe it's all towards a certain point. If you want it all over, you can do that too. There's really no right, wrong way to do this. It's just moving the wash where you want it. Okay. And you might even do 2 layers of this. You might even do 2 coats. Because you can see this goes, it goes to the recesses naturally. It goes to those deeper points naturally. And I like to, sometimes I even like to do what I'm doing here, which is I get it on and I just let the gravity move the wash, and you end up with these really neat patterns in different parts of the blade. And if it's too much, you just move it around like that. So that kind of looks too much like blood, so I'm going to move that back up a little bit. Okay. So we'll let that sit a minute, and we'll go to the other one. This one, again, just because I think most people do it. Maybe I'll do blue for you guys. Not really a right or wrong color or anything like that. I tend to think of these. I tend to think of these as a kind of highlight to your army or a contrast to your army, and because you won't have everyone with these. You'll have your sergeants or your captains or your characters, so they're not going to be everywhere. You don't do these on everything. They're just around, and it's a little detail. It's a little fanciness for you. So again, just slap it on the blade. Don't be neat. Go back and load up for more if you need. I should probably get it out there. I'm not sponsored. No one's paying me. This is YouTube video number 2. I'm just doing this to show you guys how I go about it. Now, remember I said this is going to look worse because it was darker. I don't know. I'm kind of digging that. That's kind of nice. All right, so you get your wash on, and you want to let that dry. You want to let that sit. And if you haven't done a particularly thick coat, that doesn't really take that long. This is the red, and you can see it's already mostly dry. It's a little splotchy, but that's, you don't really care. This is like I said, this is down and dirty. This is not super neat. And then what you want to do is go back in, and you're going to take your highlight color, the same one you use. This is the lighter one, remember? And this is the darker one. So the light one, we're going to go right to that polished silver. You could use the original base color. You could use tarnished steel on that. But it isn't going to pop anywhere near as much. Actually, I don't need that. I have enough there. And I'm going to grab a bigger brush this time. You want to be neat. You don't need to be super detailed. And on this one, this is really where you do want to be a little bit cleaner. Neat, I guess isn't the word, but you want to be a little bit cleaner. And just hit the edge. Just the edge. So what you have now is a field. I should say it looks like the blade has a very, very sharp edge to it, but it looks like it's covered in something. It looks like it's covered in energy or a haze or something. Which, if you're thinking about, you know, magic weapons and power weapons, that's what it is. A power weapon in 40K, in case you don't know. It's basically a regular sword made of metal or bone or whatever your race uses. And it's got a disruption field around it. Think lightsaber. You just pass it through, it cuts like butter. That's kind of what that is. Now, again, you can see the color is kind of fading out. It doesn't look so red. You could go over this again before you do this metal highlight. And I didn't totally wait for this to dry, which is why some of that's coming out. The red is kind of moving around, but that's fine. Again, this is just to show you guys how I do it. Now, if you really want to make this pop out, okay? Here's our dark one again. You can see that kind of pooled, which if you wanted to, that's not bad. It's not the end of the world where we're concerned. If you really want to pop that out, you can go to the super bright remember, we didn't use this as the highlight. We used this was our dark coat. This was the highlight we used. This is the highlight we're going to use now. And I'm just going to show you what this does. I'm actually going to get most of this off my brush. This is almost, not quite, almost going to be dry brushing. Dry brushing is when you're basically painting something with almost no paint on your brush and you're just catching edges. That's all you're doing. But it's not a clean, solid coat. Again, you just want to do that side-to-side motion. And you can see that's really popping out our blade here. I think I totally smudged that there, but oh well. You can always touch up. You can go over, like somebody wrote, paint covers a multitude of sins. Well, it includes the sins of overpainting, underpainting, whatever. If you don't like it, there's always a bottle of simple green or purple greaser or whatever you use to strip paint. Don't know anybody who hasn't done that. So you end up with something like that. And I stand a little bit corrected. I don't think that looks horrible. Getting this in for a little contrast. Yeah, I don't really think that looks horrible. Going back to our red here. So you can see it just creates a nice little effect that pops out a little bit. Very, very simple to do. And if you do that, you'll have your characters looking great in no time, and you can move on to other details. So, let me know what you think of this in the comments. Very hasty video, I know. I just kind of threw it together, wanted to do something. But if you want to see something, if you have questions, how-tos, what would this color look like? How would you go about this? Could you do it in other shades? Can you do it over gold? You know, go ahead and ask. Maybe I'll do a video on that sometime. All right, guys. Hope to see you again. Pass this around. Show your friends. I really do want to try and grow the channel. Anyone you know who's looking to this, anyone who's new to the hobby, or anyone who wants to see a different way to do this, perfect video. All right, I'll see you next time.